Hello, everybody. How are we all today? I hope everybody's well and ready to start going through some customer and supplier corrections. We've got 45 minutes booked in today and we've got plenty to go through as well. So if you've not heard me before, I'm Laura and I'm going to be hosting the webinar today for you. And we've also got Michael in the background as well, and hopefully Matt as well, who's going to be answering any questions that you may have around this topic. So if you do have any unrelated questions, we will try and answer those too, but we will prioritise the questions on the customer and supplier corrections today. But do pop them across, because if we get time, like I say, we'll try and get through those as well. But as always, if there's anything we don't get answered on today's session, we'll pop you over an email this afternoon. So just as normal on there, before we get started, just some housekeeping rules. So your mic will be muted automatically, but you'll see there is a little question icon on the toolbar where you can submit any questions you may have for Michael and Matt there. So make sure that you do pop them in there and keep them busy. Now, we are using an updated version of the webinar program, so it might look slightly different to what's on the screen there. And I think the icons, they're just along the top right-hand side, so we will get that slide updated there. But just in case it looks a little bit different, I think those options are just along the top right-hand side. And I have included the slides in the handout section there, as there are links at the end, which you might find useful as well. So, and there's some cheat sheets which we've got on there as well, which I'll come to a bit later on. So if you do want to download those, just make sure you do that during the session. And there's also a printer-friendly version as well, if you'd like to make some notes there. So this webinar is part of our Corrections Digital Badge series, and to qualify for that, you just need to attend any of the 3 out of the 4 topics listed here, plus one of our quiz sessions, and that just means you'll earn one of our digital badges. You can register on our webinars page, but I've also popped the link on the slide there too for you, just to make it a bit easier. So today we're going to be looking at processing customer and supplier corrections in your Sage 50 account software. So it looks the same whether you're doing the corrections for customers or suppliers. So what you can do in one ledger, you can do in the other. So I'll be doing a lot of the demonstration within the customers there, but it's exactly the same process for suppliers. And I will be explaining that all along the way too there. And I'm going to be covering a series of demonstrations within the program so you can see how to process these. There is quite a bit to cover, so don't worry if you feel like that it's there's a lot all at once there. You will get a recording of the webinar by email in about an hour's time after the webinar's finished, so it means you can go through it at your own pace there as well. And as always, I'll be providing those useful links to the guides on our Help Centre, which are always great to refer back to. So corrections are something that everybody's probably going to need to look at some point in time. And there's more than one way of tackling these. So first of all, we've got the corrections feature. And these are features that are within your transactions window along the top toolbar. So you've got your view, edit, unallocate, and delete. So don't worry, I will be demonstrating these, but just to go over them a little bit at the moment. So your view option, that lets you view your posted details of transactions. So you can see more detail within the posting information, and you can also see any linked transactions to the posting too. So if you've paid off a sales invoice with a credit, you'll see the allocation credit information in here as well. We've then got the edit option. So edit allows you to edit certain fields on a transaction. So it might be restricted depending on if it's VAT reconciled or if it's been automatically generated from within the software. But if you can't edit it from here, there will be a way around it within terms of a manual correction. And then we've got the unallocate option. So unallocate basically severs the link between 2 allocated transactions. So for example, if you have paid a sales invoice with a sales credit, but realized it was for the wrong sale or the wrong credit you've allocated on there, you can now just unallocate those transactions. So before the unallocate came along a few years ago, if you needed to unallocate a transaction like an invoice and a credit, you would have needed to delete one of them and then repost it. But now we've got that unallocate option, you can sever that link and leave both transactions live in the system there. That means you can just reallocate them elsewhere. And then we've got the delete option, which is quite obvious what that is. So it deletes the transaction on there. So deleting a transaction, if it's not VAT reconciled, nice and easy, it'll just delete it for you. If it is VAT reconciled, the program will post a reversal of the transaction for you. Now, there is a whole separate webinar on VAT corrections, which we're going to be running on Wednesday, the 10th of December at 2 o'clock. So I have included the link to this on here to sign up for it, as we are going to be concentrating more on customer and supplier corrections. But I will be running through a demonstration of what it looks like if you deleted them, if it is VAT reconciled, just so you can see what that looks like. But we will have a look at them in a bit more detail just in the demonstration. So there are two types of data fields when completing a transaction. So if you think about when you're entering an invoice, you have the account number, your nominal code, your bank account, and so on. Now, some are classed as a critical field and some are classed as non-critical. So for critical fields, when you amend those, that requires the original transaction to be cancelled and a new one posted. And that's because it's something that's deemed audit critical. So those are going to be things like your customer supplier account reference, your nominal code, bank account, date, the net and VAT amount, and your tax code. And then you've got your non-critical fields. So those are things where amendments can be made with no reversal or cancellation of the original posting. And that tends to be more around the details of the transaction, like the transaction reference, the transaction details, the department, the payment reference, and the bank reconciliation flag. So I've included a handy link on our help center there, which talks around editing and deleting critical and non-critical transactions. Just if you do want a bit more information on that. But again, I'm going to run through it in the demonstration as well there, just so you can see what that looks like. And there are a few things to consider when correcting transactions as well. So if you're editing or deleting a transaction that's been created from the invoices and credits module, that edit or deletion does not link back to the original invoice within the invoice and credits module. And that's the same for your stock module as well. So if you make a change to a transaction, that won't link back to your stock on there. So that needs to be a manual adjustment for the stock separately. There's no impact on original orders or quotes. And deleting transactions will still show the transactions window. So you're still going to have that transaction in there for audit purposes, but it'll be in red. And you can also filter these out if you want to. So if you don't want your deleted transactions showing in there, you can sort of hide them in the background with a filter. What I would say is though, if you're unsure, try it out in the demonstration data or take a backup of your data before you're doing anything, just if you're not 100% sure on there. But what we'll do is I'll pop into my program and we'll have a look at this in a bit more detail there. So I'll just bring my Sage up. So I'm using version 32, the professional level, and I'm on standard VAT scheme as well. So just so you know sort of what I'm using on there. What we'll have a look at first of all are those correction features that I mentioned within the transactions module first of all. So I'm going to pop into my transactions just on the left-hand side, and you can see here we've got that view, edit, unallocate, and delete option at the top. And the first one I'm going to have a look at is editing a transaction. And I'm going to talk about the non-critical and the critical fields. So I'm going to look at editing a non-critical field first of all. So remember, this is when amendments can be made with no reversal or cancellation to the original transactions. So I'm going to look at amending just the department on there. So if we have a look at the minute, we've got the department showing a 0 for all of our transactions there. I'm just going to click on the first one and I'm going to click edit at the top, which will open up the window for me on here. And we can see we've got details in here. Some are grayed out, so some you can't go in and amend. So you can't amend things like who's posted the transaction, can't the exchange rate on here. So there's some things that you can't edit. If we click edit again, it's going to open up another window. Just going to pull it over so you can see because it's opened up on my other screen. And we've got further information on the transaction. So we've got the nominal code, the details, the department, which is what we're going to look at changing. We've got extra reference, projects, and we've got the net and tax amount and the tax code as well. Down here, if we had any transactions that were allocated to this particular transaction, it would show down here. And I'll show you that a bit later because that could be really handy as well. But for now, I'm just going to be changing a non-critical field, which is just my department. So I'm just going to select department number 1. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to close the first window, and then we need to save the second window. And it's going to give me the option, do you wish to post these changes? And I'm just going to say yes. And you'll see there, now nothing else has changed, hasn't posted another transaction. It's just amended that one for me. So it's nice and easy on there. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at changing a critical field. So this is when a transaction is amended and it requires the original transaction to be cancelled and a new one posted for it. So I'm going to look at changing the date on an invoice for this one. So if I select, I'm going to select invoice number 2 for that, and I'm going to go to my edit option at the top. And it's this date here, so my created on date. So I don't need to go any further into it. I don't need to click edit for this one. I'm just going to be changing this date. So if I pull it to one side at the moment, you can see the date column we've got here. Got all of these ones in September. Now I'm just going to change it to October for this one. So I just take that out of there, and I'm just going to pop October in. And I'm going to click save to that. So that's all I'm going to do. And we're going to get another message again. Do you want to post these changes? And I'm just going to say yes. You'll see now, I don't know if you saw it was very quick on there, but you can see quite obviously there's another line because it's in red at the bottom now. So the original transaction's still there with the corrected date. So this is still showing, it's still live. But now we've got the 4th of October showing in here. So we've gained an extra transaction, which shows the original details of the original transaction along the bottom. So this was the original sales invoice here. We can see it's deleted. See transaction 2, which is that one there. So it links it back for us. And if we go along on here, we can see those details. So we know that this one has been deleted on there and this one has replaced it. And the reason for giving you that line in there is for auditing purposes on there, just so you've got those details. But that's editing both a non-critical and a critical field there. Next, we'll have a look at deleting on there. So you may need to delete a transaction, and deleting transactions which are not VAT reconciled, straightforward on there, highlight, delete, and you can create a new posting if needed. So if I just show you that, it's quite straightforward. I've got transaction 5, it's a sales invoice there. If we have a look in the VAT column, it's got an N in there, so it's not VAT reconciled. So we know that it's not VAT reconciled. We can either right click on it. You've got the options in here as well. Those are the options there. Or we could just click on delete at the top. So I'm just going to highlight that and I'm just going to click on delete. Brings up the window again and we're just going to click delete. And it'll bring up the option, do you wish to delete this transaction? And I'm just going to say yes. And that's it, easy as that on there. But now we can see if I click off it, just so you can see it's in red now as well. And the details now say it's a deleted SI. So it's a deleted sales invoice on there. So nice and straightforward. Now, deleting a transaction, as I mentioned before, if it's VAT reconciled, now that's slightly different. So if we have a look, I've got a transaction number here, transaction number 3. If we have a look in the VAT column, if I just scroll along on here, we've got an R for reconciled. We've also got the VAT reconciliation number, so it's in VAT return number 1, and the date that I've reconciled on there, my VAT reconciliation date on there. So we can see that that's been declared to HMRC. So if I make any amendments to this, I need to inform HMRC of those amendments. So I'm going to look at deleting the transaction. So just the same as before, we've got it highlighted. I'm going to click delete at the top. And it brings up this window again for me, just so we can check it again as well on there. So we've got the same one. And I'm just going to click, you can see the VAT reconciliation date there as well, just to point that out. Or we're going to click delete. And for this option, it doesn't ask if I want to delete it. It asks me if I want to reverse the transaction on there. And that's because it's a VAT reconciled transaction. So you can't delete it, but you can post the opposite. It'll post the opposite for me in the program. So reversing it means posting the opposite of a sales invoice, which is a sales credit. So it'll post that credit for me to counteract it. So previously this was something that had to be done manually, but the software will do it now for you. So if I click yes to that, because I want to reverse that, and if we have a look, it has created another transaction along the bottom for me. And we can see along the bottom, we've now got a sales credit, which reverses the sales invoice. And it links it back because in the transactions we have got down here, it'll say cancel, see transaction 3. So we know to look at transaction number 3 for the details. And within the reference column, we now have cancel as well on there for it. So you won't get a red deleted line, but you can see the original transaction is still showing, but it now has that obviously cancel in the reference column. So it's live, but it's been cancelled, and that new transaction has appeared on there. And that's a sales credit which has been posted as a reversal, because remember, we need to let HMRC know this because of the original being VAT reconciled. So when you next run your VAT return, this transaction will pop up as a previously unreconciled transaction. You would tick to include it and then correct it in your VAT figures for HMRC there. We are running, as I mentioned before, we are running that VAT corrections webinar on Wednesday, the 10th of December at 2 o'clock. So if you do want to find out a bit more about VAT corrections on there, that's a good one to get signed up for. But that is deleting a transaction when it's VAT reconciled. And you can see it's quite easy to do when it's not VAT reconciled there. Just a quick one to show you as well, deleted transactions. Obviously, they're always going to show in your audit trail. You can filter them out. You can apply a filter if you want to. It'll just hide them in the background. So if I click on filter at the top, I think it's already got it in there for me, but I'll clear it just to show you. So in the drop-down box, we can choose where. And if we choose the option transaction deleted flag, and then say is equal to, and I'm just going to choose the option no. If I apply that and close it, you can see those red transactions, they've disappeared. So they haven't deleted or anything like that. They're just hidden in the background. You can see it's only shown 24 of the 26 records. So if you do want to move those in the background, it's quite simple just to pop a filter on there using the where transaction deleted flag is equal to no. So that's quite a simple one just to pop it on there if you do want to hide those in the background. Just to remove the filter, you can just click on the little filter funnel. It'll just remove it for you just to show those transactions again as well. So the next bit we'll have a look at is unallocate. So you might have an invoice and a sales receipt which has been allocated to one another incorrectly. So rather than having to delete anything, you could simply unallocate them, which just frees them up, separating them so they're no longer linked together, and you can allocate them elsewhere. So you'll see at the moment, so I've got a transaction highlighted, but it's grayed out at the moment. So that's because my transaction number one, it's not allocated to anything. So if I just click on view and show you, and if I go to view again, just to bring that window over on there, there's nothing in this window. So I've got nothing allocated to this transaction. So that's why it's grayed out. It may be grayed out if you're on a journal as well, because obviously you can't allocate a journal to anything. So, but that may be why it's grayed out on there. So if we have a look at a transaction that has got something allocated to it, so I think transaction number 4 should have something allocated. So if we just view it to see what that looks like, click view at the top, view on there again, pull that over so I can show you. So we can see transaction number 4 is a sales invoice, and the payment allocation window shows that the allocation is a sales receipt, and it's sales receipt number 15. So it's this one here. Sales receipt number 15 has been allocated to it. So the invoice has been paid off for that sales receipt. So I want to sever that allocation on there. So if I close out these windows, and I've got my sales invoice highlighted, and I'm just going to click on unallocate at the top. We'll get the message, do you want to unallocate this transaction? And I'm just going to say yes. It looks like it doesn't do anything, but if we have a look at the transaction now, so if I go back into view and then view again, pull that back over, we can now see the details are no longer shown. So there was an allocation there, there was a sales receipt, but it's been cancelled. That allocation's been cancelled. If we have a look at transaction 15, so it was a sales receipt, but because that's no longer allocated to the transaction, we've now got that sale on account showing on there. So that's how to unallocate those transactions. And then if you need to, you can allocate that elsewhere, however you want to proceed with that. But that's how you would unallocate those transactions there. So we move on to invoices now. So invoices, it starts to get a sort of a bit more in depth on there with invoices and credits. So if I go into my invoices and credits module, and we're just going to have a look at invoice number 1 first of all. So if I just highlight invoice number 1, and I'm just going to double click on it to open it up just to show you. So we've got stock on it. So we've got battery packs that we're using here. So just to show you that. So we've just got quantity 1 and just the amount down there, which is our £6 on there. So it's a product invoice with stock on. In the posted column, it shows yes on there. So it's been posted to my ledgers and completed. So it's updated my stock. So it's taken the stock out of there for it. And it's updated the customer ledger on there as well. So we've got a transaction showing in the transactions module as well. So if I just show you within my products and services, so it's invoice number 1. If I go to my products and services, a bit easier because I've only got the one product on here. And I'm just going to click on the activity and ignore these ones. These are all the transactions from 2023, but this is the one that we're looking at here. So we've got my customer 1A and we've got invoice number 1 and we've got the goods out there and we've got the quantity of 1. So that's the goods coming out because that transaction's been posted to the ledgers. So that's been done there. If I go into my transactions module, and it should be invoice number 12. So if we have a look in the reference column, there's our invoice number there, invoice number 1. So it's posted my transaction into my transactions module as well there. So because this has been completed, it's posted an invoice into my transactions module. We've got transaction number 12 there. We can see the invoice number 1 in the reference column as well there, just here. So if I wanted to delete the invoice, if I was to delete it from the transactions module, it's not going to delete the transaction. It's not going to correct the stock from there. So what you're going to find is if you just delete the transaction from here, you've still got the goods out transaction. There's no goods returned coming back in on there. It's not going to feed it back into your invoice and credits module either for it. So if I just delete this one, I'm just going to show you what I mean by that for the stock. So if I just go to delete at the top, and I'm just going to say delete that transaction. Do I wish to delete it? Yes, I do. Close out of that. Now, if I go back into my products and services and into my activity, it looks exactly the same. The goods are still out, nothing's come back in. So I've deleted the invoice, but nothing's been adjusted for the stock on there. So if you're using the invoices and credits module, what I would be suggesting is a manual reversal using the credit option, which is going to adjust the stock for you and reverse the original invoice. So if I go back into my invoice and credits, and we'll have a look at what that looks like. So I've got another invoice here, which has got stock on it again. I'll just open it up and show you. Again, batteries. We've got the quantity this time, we've got 10 on there, and we've got the amount, which is £60 there. So what we can do is we can raise a credit note with the same details on, and this reverses the invoice in your transactions, as well as your products and services. So it adjusts the stock back in for you there. So if we have a look, I'll go back in just to show you the transaction coming out. You could see it before, but just so we know that that's what we're doing. So if we go back to products and services, into the activity there, this is the transaction that we're talking about. So we've got invoice number 2, goods out, and we've got the 10 items on there. So we need to make sure that we're raising a credit from our invoices and credits module, which will adjust that stock back in, and it's going to update your ledgers as well on there. So in our invoices and credits module, we're going to raise a credit note with these details on. Now, I've written them down already, so I've got a note of them on here, but obviously you'd be taking a note of them if you're just raising it manually. And you can just click on Create New Credit or New Credit just at the top there. So I'm going to select my customer first of all. So it was customer 1B. Now the date, that's entirely up to yourself. You can either use the same date as the original invoice, but it is going to depend on things like, have you run a year end since the original invoice date was posted? Have you run any of the reports? Do you need to sort of change that date on there? So that date is going to be sort of dependent on what you want to show on your actual reports there. But I'm going to choose my product code, and it was for batteries, because that's the only one that we've got in there, and it was a total of 10 for the quantity, and it was for £60 on there. So I'm raising that credit note. I'm going to click Save to that, and then I'm going to close it. And we can see here we've now got a credit note here for the 60. So at the moment, it hasn't been updated to the ledgers. So this is an important step on there, because we have had calls into when I worked on technical support that you've raised a credit note, but the stock hasn't been adjusted. You can't see the transactions for it, and it needs to be updated to your ledgers. So that's an important step on there. So if I highlight this, I'm going to update my ledgers, and it'll bring up this little window here. You can either print, preview it, or just save the file. I'll preview it just to show you. I'll open this up. So this is what you get when you update it to ledgers. It just tells you what you've updated there. So we've got invoice number 5, or we can see it's a credit. It's created transaction number 7 in the transactions module on there for it. And we've got the rest of the details for it as well on here. So we know how much it was for, 10, and we've got the amount on there as well. I'll close out of that. So if we have a look at the stock now, so if we go back to our products and services and have a look at the activity now we have a goods returned note on there. So because we have raised that credit note to reverse that invoice, what it's done is it's created the quantity back in, so it's adjusted the stock for you. So we had the stock going out on the original invoice, and now we've got the stock coming back in when we've raised that credit note. And then if you want to, you can then raise a refund for the customer as well. So if we have a look at the customer, just go into our customers module on the left. So it was this customer here. We can see we've got a balance on here for it as well. So if you want to, I'll show you the activity just so you can see it. You can either, depending on the customer, leave it on their account, or you can refund it back to them. But we can see the original sales invoice here. Oh, it's opened up the invoice from the Smart Link. Close that there. So these will take you straight to the invoice or to the credit on there. It's a Smart Link on there for you, as you've just seen. So we've got the sales invoice there. We've got the sales receipt just underneath, and then we've got the sales credit there. So to balance it out for our double entry, would be just processing a refund. So if I do that now for you, just to show you, if we go to refund at the top, choose our customer, stock 2, and we're just going to refund it in full, and just click save. And then I'm going to close this window just to show you it there. So we've got that balance now. So within the activity window, we'll see the double entry now for all of those. We can see it here. So that's all tidied that all up, and that's completely sort of refunded that on there. So the customer sort of back at the starting position again. So the main thing to take away from that is because the invoice was originally raised within your invoices and credits module, because we've raised that credit note, that's what's adjusted the stock back in. So you've got that goods returned on there for it. So there's a couple of things I want to show you just on the slides there as well. So just those cheat sheets that I mentioned before. So if you want to, or you prefer to post a manual correction, you need to find out what the opposite of what you've already posted is. And this is like the little cheat sheet that I've mentioned earlier on, and it's really handy to refer back to. So if you were reversing an invoice, for example, you would need to do this with a credit note. And to reverse the credit note, post an invoice to reverse it. Or if you're wanting to refund it, you would be posting a sales payment and so on there. So we can see if you've posted the transaction, what the reverse is on the other side for it as well. And this is for customers. I have done it for suppliers as well, because I know a lot of these were running through in our customers on here. But if I go to the next slide, we have one for our manual reversals for supplier corrections as well. So here we have the reversal transactions you would need to make for the manual reversals this way. So if you're downloading this, it is a really couple of handy sheets on there just to refer back to. But we have all the reversals here again, this time for suppliers. So you can see it's just the same process as for customers. So if you had a credit and you need to reverse it for a supplier, depending on what you want to do with it, you can, if you're wanting to reverse it, you would just post a purchase invoice. Or if you want to refund it to the supplier, you would just post a supplier payment. So if I give you sort of a scenario on there, so imagine you have a fully paid invoice, a sales invoice, it's being paid off fully with a sales receipt. How can we reverse that? So first we need to understand is that we need to look at reversing both these transactions. So we need to post two transactions to reverse them because there was two transactions originally. And sometimes what we see people calling in with is that they've tried to reverse it and they've posted a credit note and left it at that. But the credit note's then just left an outstanding balance on the account there, and they're not too sure why. And it's because they've only sort of part done the reversal on there for it. So we're going to have a look at manual reversals on there. So I pop back into my program and we'll have a look at a manual reversal. So we'll pop into our transactions on here. And I've got a couple of transactions on here. So it was 23, I think it was. So these two here. So we've got a sales invoice and it's been fully paid with our sales receipt. And we can double check that just by clicking on view at the top. It's going to open up that window for us. And then if I click on view again, it'll probably open it on my other screen there, which it has. I'll drag that over. We've got our sales receipt number 24, so it's just below that. So it's these two transactions here. So I want to reverse these two transactions. So what we need to think of, right, well, what have I posted so far? So we know we've got a sales invoice. I'll just try and close that down. It's having a little bit of a think about it at the moment. I think my computer's on a bit of a go slow at the moment. If I can close it down from there. Yeah, I think my PC needs, it's got a few updates that it needs to have done on there. So if we have a look, we know we've got these two transactions, we need to reverse them both. So we need to think, well, what's the opposite of a sales invoice and what's the opposite of the sales receipt there? So that's what we're going to be looking at reversing. So if we just raise the credit note and that's going to leave a balance. So we need to show the refund as well. As this includes stock, we need to do it within the invoices and credits module, because remember, if we don't do it from the invoice and credits module, that's not going to adjust the stock for us on there. So for the sales on invoice, we can see in the reference column, so if we just go across here, we can see the invoice number 4. So within invoices and credits, we're going to raise a credit and we're going to match the posting details to the original invoice on there. So if I go back into my invoices and credits module, there is our invoice there. So I can raise a credit on here for the same details. Now again, I've written the details down just to make it a bit easier, just to show you on there. But I'm going to click on new credit at the top. I'm going to select my customer. So it was customer 1A. And I'm going to choose my product, which was batteries, because that's the only one I have set up in there for it. And it was for 20. So it was for 20 items on there. And it was £120 in total. And I'm going to click save. And then I'm going to close this window. See if it'll let me close it. Yeah, it's closed it there. And now we've got our credit note here. Now again, it's not posted to the ledgers, so we need to update the ledgers. And this is going to give you that goods returned note within your stock activity there. So before we do that, that's not going to be in there. So I need to go to update ledgers at the top. It's pulled it across on my other screen there. And I'm going to say OK to that. I just made that a bit bigger so you can see that. Oh, not that big. There. And we've got that it's created in the invoice and credits module number 6 and transactions module, transaction number 29, and it's a credit on there. And we've got the rest of the details shown on here for it. So I'm going to close out of that. We've updated that to the ledgers now. So if I go into our products and services, just to have a look at that, have a look at the activity, we can now see we've got that returned, the goods returned note. So here's our original invoice that we posted. It was invoice number 4. And we've raised a credit note, which has brought that goods returned. We've returned the stock back in again, and that's created the credit note, which is number 6 in our invoices and credits module there. So if I close out of that, we'll have a negative balance on the customer record. So remember, because all we've done now is posted the credit note, that's going to reverse the invoice. And we need to now reverse that payment on there by way of running a refund for it. So we're going to now process a refund for that customer. So if we go and have a look just at the customer on here, There's our customer there. We just now need to refund that customer. So if we go to refund at the top, I'm going to select my customer. And there's our credit. That's the one that we're going to be refunding there. I'm just going to refund that in full. Click save to that. And then I'm going to close it. And then if we just have a look at the activity. So here's the original transactions that we were looking at before. Just in the transactions module, we had number 23 and 24, which was our sales invoice and sales receipt. So we have reversed the sales invoice by posting the sales credit, and we reversed that sales receipt by posting that sales payment there. And we can see the double entry for it just over here as well. So that's how you would manually reverse those. You also have the credit invoice option within the credits, within your invoices and credits module as well. So I'm just going to show you that just in case you've noticed that at the top. So this might make it a little bit easier as well on there. So if I go to my invoices and credits, I've got an invoice here. So this hasn't been updated to my ledgers yet. We can tell because it's not posted there. There's a credit invoice option at the top here. So if I update this one to my ledgers, first of all, so I'm just going to click on update ledgers just to post that. So it'll hit my stock and it'll adjust my stock for me and it'll post it to my ledgers. And we've got the details there for it. So it's posted, that's my invoice number 3, which is this one here, and the transaction number from my transactions module. I close out of that. Now, if I think, hang on, I've updated that in error, I need to reverse this invoice on here. You can post a new credit, you can write down all the details, or if you highlight the particular invoice and if you click on credit invoice, what it'll do is it'll open up a credit window for you. And along the top, we've got product credit from invoice number 3, and it's picked up those details. So it picks up the information. Now, what I would say is, and a lot of people might not have just an invoice with one line on. You might have multiple lines on here and think, well, hang on, I only want to credit one or two lines on there. You can actually just remove the lines out. So if you've got multiple lines on here, just by highlighting the line, clicking on remove row on F8 is just going to take those rows out for you. So then you can just be left with the lines that you want to raise that credit for on there. So if you do have multiple lines, you can just remove them out there, and then you can click save, which is going to create the credit note for you. So if I click save to that, you will get a message. Do you want to update this credit note and allocate it to invoice 3? So it's asking if I want to update it to my ledgers and allocate it to that invoice. I'm just going to say yes to that. And what you'll then get is another message that will pop up. I don't know why it's come up on the other screen. So it's telling me that it's posted credit note number 7, which isn't shown yet until I click OK. It's created transaction number 32 in my transactions module, and it's been updated and allocated to invoice number 3, which is this one here. And that's the transaction number within my transactions module. So if I click OK to that, you'll see that it's going to pop another line on there, which is my credit note. So it's just another way of doing it on there, a little bit easier because it pops those details in for you. So there is a correcting invoices and orders webinar on our help centre as well. I have included the links on the slides a bit later on there because that's a whole webinar in itself. So I don't want to go too far off the topic because, as you can see, it is quite a meaty session that we're doing today. There is quite a lot that we're covering on there for customer supplier corrections. But remember, everything that we're doing within the customer corrections, it's just the same in the suppliers. So there's something else I want to show you on the slides there as well. So we also have the write-off wizard, which is the write-off and refund wizard. And this is really only recommended if you're using or you're on standard VAT, which does tend to be the main scheme for our customers. But if you're not too sure, you can have a look in the help and about just at the top in the middle of your Sage there, and it will show you just on the left-hand side under configuration information, the VAT scheme that you're on there if you do need to check. So the wizard is something that completes the steps that we've already looked at and it came into the program before the refund option was available. So during that time, or when I was on technical support, it's not something that I saw people using a lot of the refunds wizard, but I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't show you that it was available. But it can be helpful if it's not something you do on a regular basis, if you're sort of using refunds or write-offs on there. But like anything, there are pros and cons to it. So it is automatic. So all the details are posted for you, which saves you time. It saves you the need to do that and write things down, makes it a bit quicker and easier for you. But you can only use it for full value. So you can't process a partial refund, for example, and you can't use it for foreign transactions either. So only transactions in your base currency you'd be able to post through this. But like I say, if you're not yet confident with the software, it can be a good way to walk through processing a correction. So it talks you through it step by step. You can even have a go at using it in the demonstration data rather than your live data. So you can't break anything in there. It's just a preset set of data. It's not linked to your live account or anybody else's in any way. But I have included a link to the guide which covers how to use the wizard, and we do have a separate webinar on write-offs as well on our recordings page. But I'll pop back in, I'll show you how one of them works on there, because it's the same for all of them on there, but just so you can have a look and see what it looks like inside it. So if I just pop back into my program here. So the write-offs wizard, it's within both customers and suppliers at the top. So I'm going to pop into customers on here. And we've got the write-offs and wizard just at the top here. So I'll just open it up just to show you it on there. So this is what it looks like on here. So I'm just going to pop into my transactions. We'll have a look at the transaction that I want to be reversing. So I'm just going to click on transactions on the left there, just to have a look. And we've got, I think it's sales invoice, I want to say number 9, this one here. Yes, we've got this transaction here. So this is the one that I want to be looking at refunding. And we can check which one's allocated, remember, by clicking on view at the top and then view again. I knew it was going to open on the other screen. If I just pull that over, and that's allocated to a sales receipt number 18. So this one here. So we're just wanting to refund both of those. So remember, if we were doing it manually, we'd be posting 2 transactions to reverse the 2 original transactions, one for the sales invoice and one for the sales receipt. But for the wizard option, I close out of here, close that one. So the customers Wiz 1. If I go back into my customers, you click on the write-offs at the top there just to open up the wizard. And I'm going to select my account. So you'd be selecting what it is that you're wanting to do on here. But I'm just going to use the customer invoice refund. I'm going to select your customer and just scroll through your customers on there. So it was this customer here, and I'm just going to click OK. I'm going to go to next. And we'll have a look in here. So I've just got the one transaction. You might have a lot more transactions within here, but I've just got the one invoice showing in here. So I'm just going to select my invoice that I want to be reversing. And then it's important you need to be selecting the right bank account on there. So I'm going to select my 1200 bank account. I'm going to click OK to that. And then I'm going to click next. And then again, if you want to, you can change the date. So if you prefer to use the same date as your invoice, whichever date's going to be best for you, how you want it to show in your records there. And then I'm just going to type in refund on there for it, just so I've got a reference in there. And then I'm going to click next. It'll just ask you to check the details to post the transactions on there. It's going to post it to the ledgers. And I'm just going to say post. It looks like it doesn't do anything. But if we go into the transactions module, and look down at the bottom here, we can see it has posted that sales credit, which will reverse the invoice, and it's posted the sales payment on there, which will reverse that sales receipt. And we've got it showing in the details here. We've got the refund and the allocation on there, and it also shows us refund in the reference. So that's using the wizard there. So you can see it posts it for you. It's nice and quick, but you can't use it for partial refunds or if you're using foreign transactions as well. So I'm just going to keep this on for a little bit longer, just while I can see Michael and Matt, they're answering questions in the background. They do look like they're sort of nearly on top of those on there. So I'll keep those open for a little bit longer. If you do have any further questions, don't forget you are going to get that recording of today's session in around about an hour's time via email as well. So if you do want to watch it back at your own pace, you can then give it to a colleague as well on there, because I know there is a lot to go through on there as well. But there is a question on there. Can I run through one for a supplier on there? Because I do appreciate I think is it Margaret that's asking that, if I can run through one for a supplier. So yeah, and pop back into the system. We'll have a look, because I think I have got one set up for a supplier. So if I just pop back in to the program, if we have a look at, I think I've got one supplier. I've got a supplier set up. Let me just have a look in transactions. So I'm sure I have one set up on here. Yeah, so I've got transaction number 16 and 17 here. So I've got a purchase invoice and a purchase payment. So those, we've got those nicely paid off on there. So if we have a look at the supplier activity, just to see what that looks like, first of all, pop into here. Nice and easy, because I've just got the one supplier on there. Select my supplier. There we go. So we've got that purchase invoice and we've got the purchase payment. So if we're just wanting to refund that, you'll see it's just the same as what we've been doing with the customers on there. So remember, we've got 2 transactions here. So we need to post 2 transactions to complete the reversal. Okay. So if I close out of here, the first thing we need to do is reverse the invoice. So the original invoice that we posted. So we'd be creating a batch credit. So we're going to go to credit. And I'm going to choose my supplier. It's just the one, so it makes it nice and easy for the demonstration on there. I'm just going to leave it as today's date on there. And the original amount was for £100, including any VAT there. So I'm just going to click on calculate net at the top, which just makes it nice and easy. No need to start working that out on there. I've used the same nominal code, the same tax code, so everything else needs to be the same when you're raising that credit note as it was when it was on the invoice. Okay, so I'm just going to click save to that, and then I'm going to close it. And we'll have a look at the activity now just to see what that is, what that looks like. Select my supplier. I mustn't have it highlighted when I'm clicking on that. So we can now see we've got the purchase invoice and we've got the purchase credit, which has reversed the invoice. So now we need to look at reversing that purchase payment, and that's going to be by the way of running a refund on there. So we're going to post a purchase refund on there. So we come back out of here and we're just going to refund the supplier there. So I'm just going to click refund along the top. I'm going to select my supplier, nice and easy with it just having one in there. And there's that purchase credit that I've just created there. I'm just going to click in the refund window, refund in full, and click save. And then I'm going to close the window so we can see what it looks like in the background there. So if we have a look at that activity now, we can see we've got the purchase invoice. So this was the original posting. That was paid with a purchase payment. We've reversed the original invoice with a purchase credit, which is this one here. And then we've reversed that purchase payment with a purchase receipt there. Okay, so you can see it's just the same. So the main thing is you need to be looking for the reversal of what you've already posted. So if you're ever stuck with it and thinking, I'm not too sure what I've done, have a look and see what you've already posted within the program. So as always, I've included some links to our guides on the Help Centre as well, which you might find useful here for, which we've covered in the demonstration anyway, but I appreciate there's been a lot to go over and everybody's got different circumstances, different scenarios on there as well, which we can't sort of cover every single scenario on there, but it can sometimes be helpful if you've got step-by-step guides in front of you. I know I always work better when I've got something to refer to on there. Those are really good links for those. And again, you can still access our webinars page just at the usual place, so sage.co.uk/webinars. So all the past recordings are free to view on here, along with signing up for our upcoming webinars. But the link's on the slide for you there. But don't forget, we're covering things like bank payments, receipts and transfers, some more corrections there with Abby, and that's this Thursday at 2 o'clock. We've then got journal corrections next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. I think that's with Michael. And then on Wednesday the 10th, we've got VAT corrections with the lovely Matt there at 2 o'clock. And the corrections quiz, that's going to be hosted by Michael next Friday at 11 o'clock as well. So get yourself sort of registered for those as well there. But that brings us to the end of today's session. So I do appreciate we've overrun just a little bit. I've tried to keep it sort of within time best I could, but you could see there was a lot to go over there. So I hope that you found it useful, especially those little cheat sheets as well, showed you what you're going to be using to post or reverse a transaction. But as always, you'll get that survey when leaving today's session. So I'd love it if you could fill it in or leave us any feedback. We always read all the feedback on there as well, with all the comments on there. But if there's anything else you'd like to see on a webinar perhaps, or anything you'd like to see done differently, pop it on there. We can have a look at it. But for now, thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day there.